Hey folks, Carl here and welcome to episode 5 of this guest build for emodels.co.uk of ICM's Ford Model T ambulance late. Okay folks, so episode 5, we are moving into paint. As you can see, everything is prepped and ready for some undercoat. So I am not going to show you that on video. It's just a matter of spraying this, getting a good even cover of the primer and a little bit of highlighting. So I'm going to head on over to the spray booth. I'm going to get this primed and prepped, ready for some paint. So we will be back in a moment. Okay folks, so as you can see, we have primed all of the model and we've got the basic black down on these parts, so we're going to get those out of the way. The engine covers there as well. We've primed on the inside of one but not the other, because this side of course is going to be open, so we're going to need to paint that whole thing. So we'll get those to one side. As you can see, there's the main cab all primed. As you can see on these two pieces, we've actually gone over and sprayed some white where we want some highlight. So we're not going to be touching this one because we're just going to spray the base colour on that once we come round to it. And we'll also get that out of the way. So the main box part of the cabin itself, you can see we painted the inside white. That is pretty much all as we're going to do with that. We're going to put a wash in there when we come to it. So on the outside, we're going to paint all these panels that we put this wood grain into. We're going to paint that first of all with a very, very light brown colour, which is this one. We're using, what's it called? XF78, a wooden deck tan. So we're going to paint each of these panels where it's wood, that deck tan. Okay, just using this. We'll thin it a little bit before we paint it on. We'll put 2 or 3 coats on. We're going to be using Tamiya. Now Tamiya is notoriously quite difficult to brush with a paintbrush. The main thing is, before you start with your brush, we're going to be using this brush here, quite a big one. We don't need to be delicate, we don't need to stay in the lines, because all of this is going to get masked off afterwards. Wet your brush before you start painting. It stops the paint getting into the ferrule and drying inside. It makes it a lot easier to clean. And the secret really with Tamiya paint is paint for a little while, then completely clean out your brush and start again, because once the Tamiya stuff starts to dry on the brush, it starts to get very bitty, and that's when it starts to make a mess of the paint job. So clean your paintbrush often and keep this reasonably thin, and very much in the adage of 2 thin coats, or maybe even 3 thin coats. So I'm going to get my palette out and everything, and we are going to get this first colour down and get 2 or 3 coats on. So I'll see you in a second. Okay folks, so we have a little bit of water in here. We've got our paint. We'll give this a little bit of a shake up, like so. We do have a proper stir over by the spray booth, but for the amount we're going to be getting out, just a quick shake like this should do us fine. Don't worry, we'll cut this bit out. Okay, so let's take a look. Ooh, so that is quite goopy in there. So we are going to give that quite a bit more of a shake. We'll be back in a minute. All right, folks, so we are back. We've given this quite a bit more of a shake up. It was actually quite goopy. It's not been used for a while, or it was a brand new bottle. I'm not 100% sure. So as you can see, that is much better. Like I say, we do have some water in here, so we're going to wet our brush to start off with, like so. And we're going to take some of this paint, we're just going to put it in the well next door, right there. Okay, put the lid back on there, stop anything from drying out. I'm just going to take a very small amount of water from this side, put it in there just to thin this out a little bit. So there we go, and all we're going to do, like I said, zoom the camera in a little bit, not too much, like so. So we are literally just going to paint these panels, just like so. We don't need to be neat and tidy. It's going to look quite thin, because it is the first layer. As you can see, that when we put the white on, we've not made it completely uniform, so we are going to get a little bit of colour variation, hopefully. So once all this wood effect has been painted, we've done all the effects we want. We are going to be masking these panels out. Actually, no, we're not, because what we're going to be doing, we are going to be adding some of the stuff that eModelers has supplied to us for this video to get some effects on this wood, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So there we go, that is the first layer of that wood effect done. There's no other wood on the vehicle anywhere else. As you can see, that Tamiya paint's gone on quite well. So we'll give this a few moments to dry out. So that's something else with Tamiya paint. If you try to paint over it again too quickly, again it starts to drag itself across the model and goes all lumpy. So we're going to give that a few minutes to dry out before we give it another coat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that there because that should be alright for a few minutes. We're going to just wash the brush out quickly. I just wash the brush out on my mat, put a bit of water down, give the brush a bit of a swirl, get most of that, get a little bit of tissue paper, which I don't have to hand, so back in a sec. Okay, so we have a little bit of tissue paper. So we'll just clean that bit up. It's on the book mat. Dry the brush out, and then a little bit more water down, and give it another clean. Just like so. Pushing too hard. Clean the brush, wipe up the water. One more clean, and that should do it. We should see that the water stay pretty much clear. So that's still gone a little bit dirty. Again, one more time, just until that water stays clean. There we go. That should do us. So let's take a look at this model, see if it's dried out, because how thin this is, it should dry reasonably quick. So not quite dry enough yet, so we'll give it a few more minutes and we'll be back in a second. Okay folks, so we are as good as dry. There's still a couple of tiny little spots that are still a little bit wet, so we're just going to be careful around those spots. And again, we're just going to very liberally get some of this paint down for the second coat. Once this starts to dry, we should see if we're going to need a third coat. So that's the 2 coats down on that one. Coats on there. So we've got a little bit of excess paint around, so we're going to just dry our brush off, take off the excess where we can see it, just so it doesn't pool and go too thick. So there we are. What we're going to do now is we're going to let this completely dry thoroughly for about 20 minutes or so, and we'll take a good look at it, and if it needs some more, we'll just repeat what we've done here and get it all cleaned, get some extra coat onto it. And so we will be back very shortly. I'll get this lot cleaned up. Probably by the time I've got this lot cleaned up, I can use this water in here now for cleaning this brush. We should know by the time we've got this lot cleaned up whether that is dry enough and if it's going to need another coat. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay folks, so this is now completely dry. If we zoom in, it's only had the 2 coats, so you can see we are not going to be needing another coat. That has dried quite nicely. So all we're going to do now is give this a quick wash with a darker brown. Well, actually quite a dark brown. We're going to be doing this one with the flat brown from Tamiya again, XF10, and we're just going to create a wash from this one. So what we're going to do is going to thin it right down, probably about 80% water, 20% paint, and we are literally just going to brush it over the top and let it fall into all the crooks and the nannies of the model. So we'll give this a good shake up because this is a new bottle, so this is going to get a right good shake up. Okay, so let's take a look at that now. There we go, that's pretty good. So again, we are going to put a bit of water in here, about yay much. We're going to wet our brush again, because it has almost dried out. Oh, we just pulled the tip of our brush off. So the brush is wet. We're literally going to dip this brush into the paint, and put that into there, and that is pretty much going to be our wash for the outside of this model. You can see it's quite thin. Paint over the top of there. Okay, so let me just wipe that down with a bit of tissue paper, just get it cleaned up so it doesn't dry. As you can see, if you don't forget to dry it properly or clean it properly, it ends up like this. So all we're going to do is we're going to get the lid back on there first, like so. Couldn't do that if I tried to, could I? Get that cleaned up before it dries. So I'm just going to soak our brush, and we are quite literally just going to paint it over the model and let it sink into everywhere, like so. Oh. Dry our brush off a bit just so we can get the excess away. There we go, and that is now what it looks like. So I'm going to get the other panels painted up, and we'll probably let it dry and do another coat. So I will talk to you all in a moment. Okay folks, so that is the whole thing done. Like I say, I'm going to leave this to dry. Let's get that excess off there. I'm going to leave this to dry for 5 or 6 minutes. It should be dry, and we'll get another coat on there. So we'll be back in a moment. Okay folks, so after letting this dry a little while, taking a look at it, yeah, we can see the wood grain in there, but it's not really that pronounced. So what we've done, we've added a little bit more paint into this, and we're going to try it again to see what effect we get. So we will just add some more to our brush. Now, we're going to try our best just to keep it within the panels this time, just to see how it goes. Okay, so we've got quite a good coat in on there. We're just going to clean our brush out and take off some of the excess. Trying our best to keep with the grain of the wood as best we can. Obviously, it does look a little bit messy at the minute. But don't forget, we are going to be painting over the top of these. And we're going to be using some of the chipping fluid over the top. So we're not going to see the whole wooden panel. We're only going to see very, very small sections of it. So we're looking for some sort of variation in the panel itself, so that when we do come and get those little scratches that are in the paintwork, they aren't all just one uniform colour. So once this is done, I am probably going to dry brush over the top of this with another different colour brown, just to see what sort of effect we get. So this is now starting to dry out quite nicely. As you can see, like I say, it's not going to be looking like perfect wood, because we're not going to see all of it. You see that front panel there, it's quite varied on where the wood colour is, so I'm just going to keep working the wet spots out of the lines of where everything is. So we should get some wood variation colours in there. So there we go, there's the first part. The camera might not pick the wood panelling and the lines of the wood in there, but it might see it there. So yeah, so the last colour we're going to dry brush, once that is of course all dry, is going to be another brown. It's slight, we've just used this one is slightly lighter, and we're literally just going to dry brush very, very gently over the top, just to give us some, again, a little bit more colour variation in these panels. Because once this is all finished, what we're going to do, let me get this palette cleaned out while we're talking, is we're going to apply some chipping fluid. Now we're going to be using the AK chipping fluid, and we're going to be using the Worn Effects chipping fluid, which gives you that sort of effect there, but we don't want it quite as heavy as that. We want it more along the lines of this, like this top section, just here, very, very light. So obviously there is an alternative. If you want really heavy chipping, you can go for this stuff, which is heavy chipping, and this gives you this effect. Yeah, really big, heavy chipping. We don't want that. We just want a very light chipping to give us that very slight worn effect on that paintwork. And obviously the base colour of this tank is this one, which is XF25, which is a light sea grey. It may look a little bit light compared to the pictures on the box, which is here. Yeah, so it looks a little bit lighter, but don't forget, we're probably going to be putting some washes over the top of this ambulance when it's finished, and that will of course darken everything down. So that is not far off dry now, so we are going to leave that to dry nice and thoroughly for a few hours. Like I say, we're going to get a very quick dry brush of this XF, no, not XF10, it's not the darker one, that's the one we used to do the wash with. So we're going to be using XF79, which is linoleum deck brown. Very, very close, but we're just going to very, very gently dry brush over the top. Quite rough as well. It won't be all of it, it'll just be certain little patches, just to give us a little bit more variation in the colour for when we apply this and do some very, very light chipping effect. So I'm going to get everything cleaned up. I'm going to clean my brush still. Oh dear, there goes the tongue again. So yeah, I'm going to get finished cleaning up, and we'll be back. I'll be back in a few hours. You'll be back in a moment. So talk to you in a sec.
emodels.co.uk. Make something awesome.
Okay, folks. So we are on to the last part of the wood. This is where we are at the moment, and we want to go from this to this. Not a huge amount of difference, just a tiny little bit darker on the raised edges. And of course we're going to do this via some dry brushing. So we have an old makeup brush. It's quite stubbly little end, and we are using XF10 to do this. So I'm sure most of you have dry brushed before. So I'll just give this a bit of a shake up, like so. We're going to open it up, and we are literally just going to put a very small amount on the tip of the brush, just like that. And then we're going to take most of it off. So there's practically nothing left on the brush itself. And then we are literally just going to start stroking over the top of this wood, just to give us a very slightly darker effect on the raised parts of this wood. And that is pretty much it. You have to keep loading your brush up quite regular. It seems counterintuitive to waste so much paint, but you're not actually wasting a huge amount of paint doing this. You can see it's starting to take shape. Okay, you can see the difference between these two that we've done and these two that we haven't. So just keep on gently brushing away. If you've unloaded your brush sufficiently from the paint, sometimes you can get away with pressing quite hard. So just keep loading your brush up, taking it all off again. Like I say, it seems counterintuitive, but it does give you great results. We are almost done with this side. So we're not going to see most of this with the next step that we're going to be doing. So there we go. I'm quite happy with that. It's just this front panel to do now. Okay, we just want it a random effect, because like I say, most of this is getting covered with paint, and we're just going to be removing some of it to give that chipped paint effect, which you will see in the next step. So I think that is going to do it. Like I say, it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to look amazing for the effect we're looking for. You could spend a lot more time doing this wood effect if you're going to keep it as it is. I don't need it because, like I say, we are going to be covering most of this up. So there we go. That is the wood effect as good as I need to get it. So for the next step, let me just tidy this up, put it away, and we'll show you what we're going to be doing in the next step. So a bit of water on the bench. Get this brush cleaned up. That should do us, yeah. Nothing really coming out of that brush now. That water up. So, what are we doing next? So the next step, we are going to be using AK's wall effects. They also come with heavy chipping. Now we don't want a heavy amount of chipping on this, so we're not going to be using that. We are going to be using the wall effects, and it will give us this sort of effect which is shown on the bottle here, just very small amounts going away. That's exactly what we want. Now, with this being acrylic, I'm going to leave this a couple of days to dry properly, okay, because we're not going to be putting any varnishes or gloss coats or anything on this. And all we're going to do is, once this is dry, you don't really need to shake this up, I don't know why I'm doing that, is brush this over Or you can airbrush it if you want to. If you're doing big areas, you can airbrush it as well. But we're just going to literally paint it over the top of here, where these wood paneling and panels are. Yeah. You then leave this for about 20 minutes to dry, half an hour. You then spray your desired colour for your vehicle of choice. In this case, it is going to be XF18, the medium blue. Spray over the top. Again, leave it to 20 to 30 minutes. And then we're going to use water on each of these panels. And this should make the paint chip away. Now, the longer you leave this on to dry, and the longer you leave the paint on after you've sprayed it to dry, the less it's going to chip. So, in models I've done before, to get the effect I want, it's somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes to get the effect I am looking for. So, like I say, we'll leave that to dry for a couple of days. But I will talk to you in a moment. Okay, folks, so it's been a few days since we put that last dry brush on this wood effect, and it is now time to get this AK Worn Effects down and onto the model. So we're just going to take it straight out of the bottle, give it a quick shake just to wake it up, and we are putting this on with a brush. You can also put this on with a airbrush if you want to. Just put a little bit into your airbrush and just spray it as you would spray paint. We're just going to wet our brush, take away any excess. Now we want to get this on nice and evenly. Just cover the whole area, make it wet all over, and then leave it to dry between 20 and 30 minutes. So we want to make sure we get a good coat all over the area that we want this effect to be. So I'm going to go over it a couple of times just to give it a chance to go evenly over the whole model. So just like so, so it's wet all over. Come around again, a little bit on the brush, spread it about like so, making sure we get it in all the crooks and the nannies. It shouldn't take any effect on your acrylic paint at all, because we've left it for a few days to completely dry off. You may find that it pools in places. This isn't a problem. We do want the effect to be stronger in some parts than others, and this will help us do that. So as you can see on this side, it's pooling a lot more. I'm not sure why, but it is. So we're just going to get it wet like so. Take some of that excess off. You want little pools, but not too much, just like so. Nothing on the back there. Give it a quick blow, see if it dries off a bit more. And we're just going to go around it one more time. It is still wet, but we're just going to apply it a little bit more. It should hopefully go around a little bit better this time, because it's had a little while to soak up some of that moisture. So just dabbing it on, spreading it around. That will do us for that side. A little bit more here. Like so. Last bit on this side. I've not used this Worn Effects before, but I have used the heavy chipping fluid. It does exactly what it said. Well, it did exactly what it said on the tin. So hopefully this will be the same, but the effect won't be quite as strong. Like I say, you need to let this dry. You can dry it off with the airbrush or blowing on it if you want to speed it up a little bit. but I'm just going to leave it to dry naturally. I don't want to blow the stuff around too much, if that makes any sense. So there we go. I think I am going to leave that now to dry all on its own. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. So we're going to leave that to dry all on its own, like I say, 20 to 30 minutes, just to make sure it is all completely dry properly. I'm going to wash my brush out with a little bit of water, if I can find my water. There it is. Just to get that stuff out. So we will be back once this is dry and I've put the paint on again. 30 minutes, I know I'm repeating myself, but 30 minutes, thereabouts, 20 to 30 minutes. So we shall see you in a moment once this is all done. Okay folks, so that is the paint on this now. We left it for 30 minutes to dry. We then sprayed it with our primary colour, which is of course XF18. Gave it a few light coats just to get the paint down there, give it a couple of thicker coats. So this now has been sitting for around about 40-45 minutes, and all we're going to do now is see what results we get when we apply some water. So got a little tub, let's put some water in. Need a huge amount, that'll do us. And we've got a shorter little stubbly brush for doing this with, just so we can apply some water, give it a few moments, and we can start jabbing at it effectively to see if we can get some of this paint lifted off. So we are going to start, where should we start? We'll start on this side. So we're just going to wet our brush. We will in fact get a little bit of tissue paper. Just for drying the brush off when we need to and cleaning the brush up. So we don't want the brush absolutely soaking, we just want it damp. And we're just going to very gently apply some water onto the parts that we want to flake away, like so. Leave it to soak a few moments. And hopefully we should start to see some results. So there we go, we are nice and wet. What we'll do is we'll zoom in a little bit further. 50-50 chance, and we got it wrong. So I'm going a little bit closer like so. So you can see that's just wet now. So a bit more water. And now we're just going to keep on going. Keep on wetting it. And, soon it should start to activate. We should start to see some of this paint peel away. Okay, we're going to get this dried off a little bit. We can take a look at what we've got. Let's see if we need to find it a little bit more. Find something a little bit more harsh. Something a little bit harsher than the brush. So, this part I am quite happy with. It's turned out quite well. See that wood effect underneath. This side is okay. I would have liked a little bit more off. Again, this side, again, I would like a little bit more off. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to see if I can find a brush that's a little bit stiffer. I'll find a few cocktail sticks, and we will have a little bit more of a go at that. So, okay, so we do have an old toothbrush. Well, it's a brand new toothbrush. I just don't use it to brush my teeth. So we're just going to wet this again quite liberally, like so. I don't think I'm going to touch this bit because I'm happy with that bit. Get this all wet again, and then we're going to gently go at it with a toothbrush. A little bit stiffer than this brush. And we're just going to very gently see if we can get this toothbrush a little bit damp as well. In there. And we're very just gently going to have a go with the toothbrush, see if it'll take a little bit more off. So, oh, the front of my drawers are all covered in paint. Very quickly get that wiped up before it dries too much. There we go. And the cleaning mat we can get clean. Zoom out a little bit. There we go. So you can see the mess it's making on my bench. But I think we are pretty much there now. So I'll get this a little bit tidied up. There we go. And we'll get a clean piece of kitchen roll. Move it out of the way. And we'll get this dried off as much as we can. Okay, so quick look while it's wet. What we'll do is we'll have a quick look now, then we'll leave it to dry properly, and then we'll take another look. So we'll zoom back in. Hey, we got it right this time. So there we can see the paint coming away. Wood effect underneath. Again, on the front, we've gone for as much off in the middle section as we can. That's where the driver and the passenger would be rubbing up against. And again, we have the same on the other side. So I think next time we won't wait 40 minutes. We'll just wait probably about 30 minutes. So we're going to let this dry properly, and we'll come back and we'll take another quick look. Okay, so I will talk to you in a moment. Okay, folks, we are now all dry. So we're going to zoom in a second, take a look at what we've managed to achieve. Now, I've not got quite as much as I wanted to. I think the effect we've got looks okay. So, is that in focus? Yes, it is. So, don't worry about the chips on the struts and the beams and stuff, because we are going to be masking this off and respraying the whole body again. I'm quite happy with the effect we've got on the front panel there. So I'm quite happy with that. So yeah, this down here looks quite nice. So yeah, overall I'm happy. I didn't get off as much as I wanted to. Next time I think I will not leave it quite that 40 minutes that we did this time. We will probably go for something like 30 minutes or something like that. So depending on the effect you want, if you want less than this, just leave that paint to dry that a little bit longer and you will get less off. But the longer you leave it, the more work you have to put in. As you saw, it took me quite some time to get this to where it is at the moment. So happy with that. We can now move on to the next part. So I've lost track of time. I'm not sure how long this video has been going on for. So I'm going to wrap this one up here. And I want to say thank you to eModels for letting me do this build. I'm enjoying it so far. It's taken me a little bit of time with real world commitments, but we're getting there slowly. So I'm going to say again, thank you all very much for watching. Be good, be safe. As always, keep making models, and we will see you next time. Ta-ta.